We all like to think we're smart. We believe it's impossible for us to be easily fooled, whether by politicians, the media, marketers, or most importantly, ourselves. But the harsh truth is, the human brain has evolved to be deeply vulnerable to deception. In this video, we explore both sides of the coin, how our brains lie to us, self-deception, and how others exploit these exact cognitive flaws against us.
The strangest kind of deception comes from within. To maintain its own comfort, our brain is a master at scamming ourselves. It mostly does this through three main tools. First, confirmation bias. We desperately want to be right, so we actively seek out information that confirms our prior beliefs and completely close our eyes to contradictory facts. Second, cognitive dissonance. When our actions clash with our beliefs, the brain experiences mental distress. Instead of fixing our behavior, it quickly manufactures a beautiful excuse or a lie to make us feel good again. Third, wishful thinking. We believe things simply because we want them to be true, not because they actually are.
Now that we know the vulnerabilities of our brain, let's see how others exploit them. First, emotional manipulation. Fear and greed. Manipulators never target your logic, they trigger your deepest fears or your greed. When you're terrified or deeply greedy, the logical part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, effectively shuts down. Second, the halo effect and false authority. If someone is well-dressed, wealthy, or famous, our brain automatically and falsely assumes everything they say must be right across all topics. Third, social proof, the bandwagon effect. When we see a majority doing or saying something, we shut down our critical thinking and follow the crowd, simply because humans are terrified of standing alone.
Have you ever wondered why people who join cults or invest in obvious financial scams refuse to leave, even when presented with clear proof? This brings us to a terrifying psychological trap, the sunk cost fallacy. Once a person invests time, money, or emotional energy into a belief, admitting they were fooled means admitting their past sacrifices were utterly meaningless. The human ego hates this pain, so instead of accepting the truth, the brain doubles down. It creates an even bigger illusion to protect the ego, convincing the victim that they are on the right path. In short, the more you have lost to a lie, the harder it becomes to break free from it.
There is another fatal vulnerability in human nature, our core desires. Whether it's the obsession with wealth, power, status, or physical attraction, human cravings act as a blinding fog over our intellect. Manipulators throughout history have known one golden rule. If you want to deceive someone, offer them a shortcut to what they desperately desire. When a person is driven by intense greed for quick wealth or captivated by lust and physical attraction, the brain releases dopamine. This dopamine rush bypasses logical evaluation. You don't get fooled because you lack intelligence. You get fooled because your desire creates a blind spot so massive that you willingly ignore obvious red flags just to believe the promise is real.
In the modern digital age, deception has become automated and customized. Modern algorithms analyze your exact psychological vulnerabilities and feed you content that purely matches your biases. You are no longer just exposed to a simple lie, you are trapped in a customized digital bubble where everyone seems to agree with your illusions. This transforms a subtle self-deception into absolute ideological extremism, making you completely blind to reality.
So how do we protect ourselves from this complex architecture of deception? You don't need a degree in psychology. You just need to implement the 5-second pause rule. Whenever you encounter information that triggers an intense emotional reaction, whether extreme anger, sudden fear, or overwhelming excitement, pause for 5 seconds. Ask yourself 3 critical questions. Who benefits if I believe this? Is this true, or do I just want it to be true? Am I reacting with my logic or my ego? By creating this tiny gap, you reactivate your brain's logical center and break the spell of manipulation.
Up to this point, we have dissected the architecture of deception, how our cognitive biases betray us, how external manipulators play on our survival instincts, and how algorithms trap us in customized echo chambers. But if we stop here, we are missing the most critical piece of the human puzzle. Recognizing the trap will never be enough to save you if your inner doors remain wide open. External manipulators do not create your vulnerabilities out of thin air. They merely exploit the uncontrolled, unexamined regions of your own soul. If you possess untamed greed, unexamined fear, or an obsessive need for external validation, you are handing the remote control of your mind to anyone who knows which buttons to press. The ultimate, most decisive shield against deception is not just critical thinking, it is self-purification and inner mastery. It is the conscious, daily discipline of taming your inner state so that no external illusion can blind your intellect. To understand how to master yourself, we must look at the primary entry points through which deception infiltrates human consciousness, starting with the heavy fog of greed and human desire. Greed is perhaps the easiest handle for a manipulator to grab. It thrives on a deep, unspoken sense of internal lack, the subtle illusion that you are incomplete right now and urgently need something external to fill that void. Financial scammers, cult leaders, and fake gurus thrive on this exact void. They promise you quick riches, effortless status, or instant enlightenment. When a person's mind is consumed by intense greed, the brain floods with dopamine. This neurochemical surge bypasses logic, turning obvious red flags into invisible background noise. You don't get fooled because you lack intelligence. You get fooled because your overwhelming desire makes you want the lie to be true. Self-purification means actively training the mind in contentment and inner sufficiency, not as passivity, but as psychological independence. It is building an internal foundation so solid that when someone offers you a shiny, unreal shortcut, your purified mind calmly responds, I am already grounded within myself. I do not need your shortcut, and I will not trade my peace for your illusion. When you neutralize greed, you disarm the most powerful weapon a manipulator possesses. The second entry point is fear. Fear is the most primitive weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. When you are terrified, your prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, analysis, and critical thought, effectively shuts down. Your amygdala takes over, locking you into a primitive fight or flight state. Propaganda, sensationalized media, and scaremongering actors rely entirely on manufacturing artificial urgency. They make you feel that if you don't act right now, you will suffer an irreversible loss. To purify yourself from fear does not mean you will never feel afraid. It means developing the emotional stability to observe fear without letting it dictate your actions. It is the practice of self-regulation. When fear strikes, a self-mastered individual builds a mental sanctuary. They take a step back, take a breath, and refuse to make decisions in a state of panic. They recognize a fundamental truth. Any offer, narrative, or demand that requires immediate action driven by terror is almost certainly a trap designed to bypass their intellect. The third and perhaps most dangerous entry point is the unexamined human ego. The ego craves flattery, desperately fears being proven wrong, and loves the feeling of moral or intellectual superiority. Manipulators exploit this by feeding your ego, telling you that you are part of a special, enlightened elite, while everyone else is blind. Once your ego adopts a belief, accepting that you were wrong becomes psychologically devastating because admitting the lie feels like destroying your own identity. Self-reform requires the deep, quiet humility to look in the mirror and admit, I am fallible. My brain can lie to me, my desires can blind me, and I must constantly audit my own motives. True inner strength is not the belief that you are immune to deception. It is the constant vigilance of knowing that you can be deceived if you let your guard down. Humility is the soil in which genuine wisdom grows because a humble mind prioritizes objective truth over its own fragile pride. Ultimately, self-purification is the highest form of human freedom. It transforms you from a reactive vessel, constantly pushed around by external triggers, biological cravings, and clever manipulations, into an anchored, self-governed individual. When you master your inner world, quiet your greed, regulate your fear, and tame your ego, the outer world completely loses its power to deceive you. You become impossible to manipulate, not because you know every scam in existence, but because there is simply nothing inside you for a liar to hold on to.
True intelligence is about having the courage to doubt your own mind and admit when you're wrong. What was the time you realized you were severely fooling yourself? Drop your story below, like the video, and subscribe for more deep dives into human psychology.